Greetings, Blazers Edge readers and Blazer fans, and welcome to the Blazers Edge Videocast. I'm Dave Deckard, along with our good friend Sam Tung, and today's topic is All-Star Weekend. Now, I have a confession to make right off the bat. Professional obligations kept me away from the TV this weekend. I was not able to watch many of the proceedings, but Sam admirably filled in for us, and he's going to be our expert today. So, Sam, let's have at it. From the impressions I get reading Blazers Edge on a Monday morning, it doesn't seem like I missed much this weekend.
No, you really didn't. And I think that, there was, leading up to it, there was a lot of talk about how Damian Lillard was going to play. Obviously, he was in almost every event of the All-Star Weekend. So there was a lot of hype going into it, but overall, not only was it a slow weekend for Damian Lillard, it was also just kind of a dud of a weekend in general.
Well, let's walk Lillard through his weekend then. Began Friday night with the Rising Stars Challenge. I did get to catch a little bit of that game. I was hoping to see some fireworks from Lillard, but instead we got the Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dion Waiters show. That was all right. Other than that, it seemed like the game was pretty much almost a waste of time. What were your impressions?
Well, it seemed like, I agree, yeah, that there were a couple guys that clearly stood out in that game, but as it pertains to, the hometown guys, it seemed like, or the hometown guy, I should say, it seemed like in this game that there were a couple guys on the floor, namely Damian and Anthony Davis, that they were playing in this Rising Stars Challenge, but it was almost like, yes, they're rising, but they've sort of risen higher than the rest of the other guys in this game. And I really thought that it was pretty obvious that those two in particular were playing a game, playing a pickup game with a bunch of really good young talent. But you could tell that those two were clearly the cream of the crop. And even though they didn't have the greatest overall games, you could really tell that those were the guys that sort of transcended that game, but were still playing based on their age.
How much do you think, though, that played to Middle America? I mean, as a learned basketball observer, maybe you could see that, but for the sake of people in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, do you think Damian should have been a little more aggressive, should have taken over that game, kind of like Hardaway and Waiters did?
Potentially, but I also think that Middle America, or the novice basketball watcher, probably isn't watching the Rising Stars Challenge on Friday. But so I do think that this is definitely a game that's for the much more hardcore basketball fan. I think they brand it differently, but sure. I mean, if you wanted to have more exposure, that would have certainly been a good opportunity for that. But I think he was kind of banking on Saturday and potentially Sunday having, allowing for him to be much more visible across the viewing audience, but for circumstances that were generally out of his control, that just didn't pan out that way. So I guess
let's talk about Saturday. I mean, I didn't get a chance to look at it really, but he won kind of the skills competition, right, with Trey Burke, co-champions or something. And then you have the three-point shooting. Bellinelli won that. And then you have the dunk contest. Who knows who won that? What was going on there?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. The NBA introduced a lot of gimmicks to the Saturday events. You mentioned with Lillard and Burke, those two, they did win the skills competition by 1/10 of a second, I should add. So at least it was a little exciting. But they did have to split that trophy, and it was a little odd. Everything was very team oriented and conference oriented. And that was one of the wrinkles that the league threw in this year. And then you move to the three-point contest, where there was a whole rack of money balls, which sort of got away from the normal three-point contest, and then the dunk contest, where the fans voted on who the dunker of the night was, And John Wall, who was the dunker of the night, only had to complete one dunk when it actually mattered. So it was very gimmicky. And as we've talked about before, Dave, this is the place where you can compare eras. It's a place where if you dunk from the free throw line in 2014, it's like dunking from the free throw line in 1985. So I do think that you can sort of provide some sort of historical context to what's going on. However, a guy winning the dunk contest on one dunk is, as a fan of the game, it's a little frustrating to see something like that.
Yeah, I'm not much of a traditionalist, but it sounds like what you're describing broke tradition for not such a good reason. I mean, maybe they were trying to give the contest something, some meaning beyond just the individual accolade, something to play for, like your conference or what have you. Or maybe, frankly, they were just trying to take it easier on, for instance, the dunkers, make them not dunk 8 times in a night or what have you. But by robbing the tradition for no cause, you also took away, as you say, the basis for comparison. So who knows how John Wall will end up in the pantheon with Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan. You have no basis for comparison anymore. So historically, it's almost as if this Saturday evening didn't happen.
Well, and to be fair, John Wall, the dunk that John Wall had in his one dunk, he hit in his first attempt, which I think carries a lot of weight. And it was a nice dunk, jumping over a guy and then catching the ball in the air and dunking it backwards is pretty impressive. But on a historical level, it's going to be. I don't think people are going to look positively at the new version of Saturday night, and I'm going to be fairly confident that there are going to be changes before 2015.
Yeah, and for our purposes, this was Damian Lillard's big chance to shine, and he played on an evening where nobody got the chance to shine because the format kind of gunked everything up. You could have been the Michelangelo of dunking or three-point shooting, and you still would have gotten lost in the shuffle, which is a little unfortunate when you consider that in recent years that Saturday night has really become the vehicle to promote new stars and to get people excited about players that they wouldn't normally see, since LeBron James, Kevin Durant, etc., just refused to participate.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing that this Saturday night has basically become a showcase for the younger guys, for better or for worse. And ironically, it was the young all-stars that were supposed to be the big names in the competition: Damian Lillard, Paul George, and John Wall. This goes to show, A, why the big-name guys aren't going to participate, especially, I would imagine once they heard all these changes, they didn't want to necessarily participate in that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it wasn't so much that Lillard had a bad weekend. He actually was one of the standouts of Saturday night, especially in participating in all those different events. However, circumstances sort of led to him not shining, just like all the rest of the guys.
Yeah, those big names did participate too. I mean, we saw LeBron James tweeting on his cell phone. Kevin Durant was playing Plants vs. Zombies. I mean, they were all there. They were just doing other things, which, of course, made all of us, I suppose, think that we should be doing other things besides watching this as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that Durant was probably actually playing Flappy Bird. I'm gonna guess that was what was going.
Speaking of Flappy Bird, Blazer fans apparently want to give some sort of bird to West coach Scotty Brooks for playing LaMarcus Aldridge and Damian Lillard a combined total of 22 minutes in Sunday's game. They scored 13 points between them on, I believe, 5 of 17 shooting. This was not the Sunday that Blazer fans had anticipated. What happened, and how serious or how worked up should we be about it?
I don't think we should be worked up. It's not serious. I mean, on the levels of seriousness of of NBA problems, these two guys not shooting well in the All-Star game, I don't think ranks as a 10 out of 10 on the scale. But I will say it's just another reiteration that the All-Star game is for, the transcendent superstars. It's for the LeBron James and the Kevin Durants of the world. And I also think that, they had they got some shot attempts. I think Aldridge had like 9 shot attempts, and he only made a couple of them. So they had some shot attempts. They had some opportunities to get on the scoreboard. Their style of play isn't necessarily conducive for the game, although you would have thought Lillard being in the dunk contest might have had an opportunity to make a big play in that game. But, all things considered, I think that the deck's kind of stacked against the Trailblazers to begin with. And this was just another reflection of that.
Might have helped if the roster didn't contain 52 power forwards and 92 point guards.
Exactly.
But, I did have actually the chance in my car to catch the pregame on the ESPN brand of national radio affiliates. And out of 30 to 40 minutes of pregame hype, I swear to you, all but 5 minutes were devoted to, we want this to be LeBron versus Durant, and how excited are you about this? And everybody they stuck a microphone in front of was saying the same thing. So perhaps the Portland Trailblazers selection were at the mercy of something a little bit beyond their control there, too, this force of nature that was supposed to be this titanic matchup. And they didn't have the juice of a Carmelo Anthony or Blake Griffin to kind of overcome it. They simply got swept away in a day where Scott Brooks would have been crucified had he not played Kevin Durant, and the same with Frank Vogel had he not played LeBron James.
Well, yeah, and it's ironic, too, because you would think that Brooks, if he's not going to play any guy, it's probably going to be his superstar. But I do think, as you mentioned, circumstances really led into this thing, and it's something that the Blazers inherently deal with. I think, though, because it was so hyped, because Lillard was participating in all these events, because it was the first time that the Trailblazers had 2 All-Stars in the All-Star game in 2 decades, I think that for Blazer fans it was a big deal to have all these different things. The problem is, on a national scale, it's not as big of a deal. Kevin Durant and LeBron James and the head-to-head, even though they've only had one this season, but having that matchup in the All-Star game on a national stage, that's going to trump any storyline, let alone 2 Trailblazers making the All-Star game in so many years. And I think that we as Blazer fans often think it's a big deal, and it is. But when you start talking, as you mentioned, when you're sitting in your car, that's not the storyline that's necessarily going to keep people glued or locked onto that station. So it's a circumstantial thing, but the fact that there was so much talk heading into it, I do think is a win for both Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers.
So let's sum up then. Let's leave Aldridge alone because, he is what he is. He's obviously the best or one of the very top power forwards in the game. He's probably not going to go up or down in people's estimations too much based on one All-Star appearance. He's already had 3. However, this was Damian Lillard's weekend, supposedly. One of the main benefits of having him do every event was so he could erupt on the national stage. It didn't seem like that quite happened. Maybe it wasn't in his control, but it still didn't happen. He wasn't one of the names that you really talk about coming out of this weekend. How big of a lost opportunity is that for Damian, or do you think it really matters, or do you think there's anything he could have or should have done differently?
Well, I think it's certainly a lost opportunity just because, how many opportunities do teams from the Pacific Northwest get to play and to assert themselves on a national stage? It doesn't happen all that often, and now living on the East Coast, I understand that when games start at 10:45 at night, you're not staying up to watch that game, especially if it's a team that to people over here is essentially irrelevant. So I think that it is somewhat of an opportunity lost. However, I will say that Lillard could have certainly hurt himself this week or this weekend, and I think that did not happen. He's a guy that was participating in so many events. He really could have flamed out and been a dud. And that could have been a storyline is, hey, he participated in all these events and did absolutely nothing. You know, he showed up for the dunk contest and threw down a couple pretty nice dunks. He won the skills competition. He was at least somewhat competitive in the three-point shootout. So I think that, you know, on Saturday at the very least, he was at least one of the key participants, if not the key participant on that day. So I don't think that he hurt himself. Did he help himself, though? It doesn't really seem like that was the case.
All right, well, there you have it. We will put All-Star Weekend behind us and head back to the regular games and the exciting conclusion to this surprising season for the Trailblazers. Stay tuned this week. There will be more videocasts coming up addressing your email questions. You can send those anytime to blazersub@gmail.com. That's blazersub@gmail.com. For Sam Tung, I'm Dave Deckard. We will see you in a couple days.